This is Coach Scott Martin with the Ohatchee Indians, and you're watching Average Joe Sports Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to Mornings with Martin. We're here with Coach Martin. This show is brought to you by Ohatchee Discount Supermarket. Coach, big win last night. Got a 28-8 win over Sachs. Talk about that.
Well, it was a good win. Anytime you can go into a opponent's place and get a win, a big win, a region win, those are always nice. And Sachs is never an easy out. I mean, Jonathan and them, their team is just, when you watch them on video, they're just one play away here or there from possibly winning some of these big games. And we knew that going in, and last night was no exception. We were fortunate enough. We made some really good plays. We got some turnovers, and I thought did really well across the offensive front. But they drove down the field and had a chance down inside our red zone a couple times, and we were able to hold them out and come away with a big win. But when you go against Sachs and a Jonathan Miller coach team, they're going to be well coached. And I thought, like I said, last night was no difference, and that was a hard-fought win, and we're proud to come away with it. If
you come across Coach Miller and he's got a big smile on his face, it's because his schedule was kind of stacked up pretty front heavy.
Well, it was. And he knew that going in, and you never know how it's going to be every year because obviously teams change every year. And he probably didn't know a whole lot about us other than we've played, some junior high and JV games at times. But, he faced Piedmont, who's number 1, Welborn, who's number 3, then us, who's number 8. So he faced 3 top 10 teams in 3 consecutive weeks. And, coming out of those, if you don't get the win, the main thing you want to do is come out healthy because it takes 4 teams to get into the playoffs. And right now, he's still fighting for one of those spots. And a slip up by any of us could move him up ahead of one of us. But at the same time, if not, then probably, him and Hoax Bluff are battling it out for that 4th spot, provided that one of these other teams doesn't make a late run. So it'll be interesting to see how they finish. But I think they are a good football team, and they're just fast, but they're physical. And but hey, everybody in our region's physical.
This is this is a tough region right here. I was watching some of the highlights, and there was some big plays, but I guess you and other coaches have taught me the why the big play. Last night, Eli had just an amazing 74-yard run, and I rewound it probably 20 times looking at how that happened. And one thing that stood out to me was the fact that Greg King was in the end zone right behind him, and you had Jack McCombs, and it was great blocking, but it was a great run.
Right.
But it's all of that coming together.
Well, there's no doubt. It's no secret that, Eli's a great athlete, as is Noah and Trey Pesnell and some of those other guys do a great job. But the bottom line is to have big plays, you've got to be able to have guys that execute and continue executing even downfield. You're going to have guys that make breakaway runs. But one of the things that happens for the real big runs, you'll often see a lot of those guys, down the field with them making key blocks or putting themselves in key position. And last night was no difference. On a couple of big runs that we had some excellent blocking at the point of attack.
Yes, sir. Speaking of which, Trey Pesnell stood out. He had a fumble recovery, a interception, a 2-point conversion, and several kick-out blocks.
Yeah, well, Trey, we ask a lot of Trey. He's kind of a behind-the-scenes type guy. I know a lot of the press will go toward Noah and go toward Eli. But when you look back, Trey just usually every week has a very quiet but very productive game. And obviously he blocks on the perimeter for us, which is extremely important. Also, from a defensive standpoint, he can play safety for us. He can play corner for us. He kind of runs the secondary and the defense. And, like you said, he had a big interception last night. fumble recovery, another turnover, and then had a 2-point conversion, which was big at the time. But I'll tell you this, one of the things those defensive guys stress every week, and especially this week, we really stressed getting some turnovers, and I thought our guys did a great job of getting some turnovers last night.
Yes, sir. Y'all had 3 turnovers, fumble recovery, and 2 interceptions. You were also 6 of 11 on third down conversions.
Well, again, with what we do offensively, one of the things we strive to do is put ourselves in a favorable third down conversion opportunities. I think we had a couple of long yard situations last night that, we tried not to get into, but, you might have a penalty or you might have a bad play. Give the other team credit. And then sometimes you can't convert those. But if we can get ourselves in enough short yards or medium yard third down conversions, we feel pretty confident we can go ahead and do that.
And y'all held them to just 3 of 12 third downs. So the defense is really clicking. I think right now you're clicking on all cylinders, and which is good. Going into an off week. Like you talked about last week, going back to the fundamentals.
Right. Well, I think that and I've said this from the very beginning. Probably, if you went back and looked at some of our earlier shows, you'd know that I still think your good football teams are first and foremost built around good defenses. I think that has to be the consistency and the building block for everything else. And Coach Jennings and those guys have done a great job of. We put the defense first. People might not realize that because we do score some points offensively, or we might have some big plays on the offensive side. And of course, those are the ones that everybody ooh and ah about and they talk about. But Aiden Simpson made some great plays defensively last night. That you saw those, but when you put them back to back to back to back to back, and see how solid and how consistent our defense plays, I think they can keep us in any game.
I think so. Which is odd that your offense scores. It's the double wing T. And, I don't want to call names, but I did hear a few run the balls. Because that's what some people are there for. It's kind of like NASCAR and the crashes.
Well, it is. I mean,
regardless of how good that run attack is, they still want to see that ball thrown.
Well, it's funny. They always want the ball in the air, but the proof's in the pudding and where you finish, and it's also in what your kids excel and what they can execute the best. We work on our passing game. Believe it or not, people probably wouldn't believe it, but we work on it basically every day. I mean, and we work hard on it, and we talk about it, and we work on the protection, and we work on the routes, and we do all of that. But you can only do what your opponents allow you to do, and if they're going to continue to allow us to run the ball and control the game and the clock that way, when we went to this offense, I guess it's been 6 years ago, the big reason we went to this offense was to eliminate the possessions of the other team's offense. It wasn't about oh my gosh, I think this can be a prolific offense and we can score a bunch of points. It was about, I'm not going to give the other team a chance to score a bunch of points. And I think we've been relatively successful at doing that. And so it might not always be pretty offensively, but the whole premise of this offense is for us to play defense and not to have to be on the field all night long defensively, which when we were in our spread attack and throwing the ball a lot more, that's what it was allowing. It was probably allowing 4 to 5 more possessions for the other team's offense through the night. So what we do, it's calculated, and there's a reason why we do what we do. It might not be very pretty. That's why it's called the ugly eagle. It's not called anything else because it's not a super pretty offense. Now, it's pretty when you score and bust off big runs and you win football games, but ultimately the whole goal going into every game is to win the game. It doesn't matter what it looks like, whether it's ugly, pretty, or whatever. And you've got to do what your kids do best, and our kids run the ball best.
This offense, and do you think this offense could be successful at the next level?
I'd probably say probably not, only because in college you're able to recruit players that can, from an athletic standpoint, defensively, they could jam up that box and they could make it difficult. When we play teams in this offense, people always say, well, how do you beat? How do you get yourself beat? Well, a lot of times it's just physically the guys you're playing are better than you. And so you go in and you lose a football game because the guys beat you that night were better than you that night. Could I have beaten them if I was in any other type of offense? Probably not. I would have probably given them a lot more opportunity. If they're already better than you from a physical standpoint or better than you from an athletic standpoint, then by spreading them out, is that going to make it any better? Probably not. It's probably going to make it worse. So I don't know that you could do it at the collegiate level other than it could be a goal line or short yards package or something, and I think that you see some of that. It'd be fun to see somebody try it, but it'd have to be somebody that didn't care. You know, you'd have to recruit for that, kind of like Paul Johnson did. I mean, look what Paul Johnson did at Georgia Tech in their heyday when he came in and put in the triple option at Georgia Tech. They had to change because they were a wide open spread football team, and so it took a few years for them to get that type of personnel from start to finish. And now it's taken Georgia Tech a few years to get away from that offense. It takes 3, 4, 5 years to recruit players that fit whatever you're doing and have enough of them. So whoever tried to run this at the next level would have to have at least 4 or 5 years to be able to get enough of that type of personnel. And I don't know how many tight ends and fullbacks there are out there, and because everybody's running spread.
I don't know how many athletic directors would be that patient.
That's exactly. How many fan bases, you know?
Yes.
Because it is entertainment at the collegiate level, you know, to some degree. So I'm not sure 3 yards in a cloud of dust would be exciting to anybody except some of us purists.
Yes.
But now, football on defense to me is size is important and strength's important, but speed is the number one thing. You've got to be able to have guys that can run. And again, I think that we've been able to put together a defense that can run to the football, and I think that's important.
Yeah, the sideline to sideline guys are very important.
It is now.
Setting the edges.
Right, exactly. If you don't, and you know this because you repeat me so often on that, but from a defensive standpoint, you got to be able to set the edge. And if you can't do that, you're in for a long night.
I'll never forget when you said it, and I don't know if you remember saying it, but if we don't set the edge, everything we did in the middle was for nothing.
That's right, because then it's just kind of like a washout, you know, out there on the edge. I mean, you've got to be able to turn it back in to those inside guys at some point.
So we got us an off week.
We got an off week, and much needed. I mean, it comes right in the middle of the season. We're 4-1, 2-1 in the region. We'll be off this week. We'll practice this week, you know, as normal, and then we'll come back in next Sunday like we normally do in the afternoon and start our prep week for Piedmont. I'm sure we'll look at a little Piedmont stuff this week, just a little.
They got a pretty good squad over there.
They do. They have a fine football team. You know, they're not. They played in the last few state championships, last couple. They won last year. You know, the tradition of that program that Steve Smith has over there is second to none in AAA for sure, and second to most of them in the state. He's done a fantastic job. They've got a great group of guys, and the one thing that's been consistent since I've been here is we've played them every year in some shape, form, or fashion. Wow. And we played them my first 4 years when we were in the region with them, and then the next 2 years we played them in a jamboree. You know, I enjoy playing Piedmont. You know, win or lose, we haven't been on the win side in those 4 games. Jamborees, I think we've tied a lot, but because those aren't very long. But the one thing about it is, you know, you're playing one of the best teams in the state every time you step out against those guys. You know, they're well coached, but more than that is usually when we get together, it's just a great football game between 2 good programs and guys that respect each other, and it's going to be one of those games like it was a few weeks ago when we played Wellborn. It's going to be 2 really good football teams, and we'll be over at the Field of Champions in Piedmont in a couple of weeks and need everybody we can get over there. It ought to be like a playoff atmosphere when we go over there, so we're looking forward to that.
Yes, sir. What was it? Yeah, I don't want to divulge what we talk about off camera, but you know, you were talking about teams not playing other teams, and it didn't, you didn't take it from a football standpoint. You took it from a give the kids the most opportunity, because they are kids. They're on a timeline here.
Well, that example is I hate that a team like Piedmont, not to their fault. I mean, Weaver had a COVID situation where they had some kids that were out, so they weren't able to play this week. So they had to forfeit. Well, there were some other teams in the same boat that
could
had
have
forfeits that could have agreed to play Piedmont and did not do it. And I felt bad about that, not just for Piedmont, but really, like I said earlier, was the seniors. I mean, there's a limited number of opportunities for these kids to play the game. And I want the kids to be able to play the game. And yes, you might be playing the number one team in the state. But the bottom line is you're in this to let the kids play the game. And I hate that they weren't able to find another opponent on in a short week period, because not so much, oh my gosh, that they needed to play a game. I mean, his program is their program. But I'm thinking from a kid's standpoint, he's got seniors on that football team that have lost a play date. And I just hope that, most of the people out there, as long as when COVID hits and there's a forfeit situation, if you've got an open date and somebody else has got an open date now and you can get together, remember what we're doing it for. We're doing it so the kids can play the game.
Exactly.
And as long as we don't forget that, then I think it'll all be fine. But
that's a memory they could have made. That
exactly.
They don't. It could be a team that don't normally get to play Piedmont.
Exactly. I mean, and I'm not saying that the result isn't going to be what the result usually is. I mean, but the bottom line is that your kids would have had a chance to have played a date that everybody sat home on Friday night instead, and it's just a wasted date. So, I hate that for them, but they'll get through it. But we have an open week, not because we chose to, but we already have 10 games spread out through 11 weeks. So this is right in the middle of ours, and Steve accuses me of the Alabama LSU syndrome, that I take a week off every time before I play him. And so far in the first 4 years, that is true. We got the week off before we played them. Didn't help us a lick. so
he's right. But
I mean, it wasn't on purpose, but it worked out that way. And but it hadn't helped us a lick. So I don't know that. Probably about as much as it's helped LSU over Alabama, except for last year. So, but we're welcoming this week off. I think the kids are welcoming it. It gives us a chance to get our legs back under us, heal up any bumps or bruises. Because again, in this region, every week is a dogfight, and win or lose, but especially even winning games, you still get bumps and bruises. You still get kids that physically, last night was probably one of the first games in a long time that we physically had to play 4 quarters. So we played 4 quarters against Welborn plus into overtime. And last night, we played it, 4 quarters with basically our starters out there. So it's going to be important, and I was glad to get that full game in knowing we're going to play this week.
Yes, sir. Well, Coach, we certainly appreciate it. Again, this is brought to you by Ohatchee Discount Supermarket. And, Coach, we will see you in 2 weeks.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.